Black America Talks takes you inside a strategic voting town hall hosted by Dr. Byron Brazier, pastor of Apostolic Church of God in Chicago. The panelists were National Action Network's founder, Reverend Al Sharpton, Indigo publisher Hermine Hartman, Tribe Magazine CEO Morgan Elise Johnson, Noble School CEO Constance Jones, and WVON Radio's Rufus Williams and Matt McGill. The town hall was moderated by Roland Martin, host of Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
And I do want to welcome you to this town hall for strategic voting, which is sponsored by the Lewis Carr and Donald and Elizabeth Thompson Foundation. Our purpose tonight is to educate, to inform, and to encourage everyone to vote. That is our purpose. Why is voting this year so important? Some say it's about freedom and democracy. Others say it is about civil rights and civil liberties. That voting is about racial equality and not returning to a time of Jim Crow laws where black people were subjugated as second-class citizens, even though our contributions to America have been great in all aspects of American society. The truth of the matter is that we're voting because of all of the above. And there are many reasons for black people to be skeptical of political processes, and everyone has their own grievances, but not voting in today's climate would be tragic for you and for everyone you care about. Not voting the strategic interests of the black community would be devastating. The essence of strategic voting is to leverage the electoral process to address the systemic issues within our society and to totally reject the interests of those that support Project 2025. We recognize that this election marks a turning point for the continued freedom of black people. Our willingness to vote and to vote our present and future interests will prevent the return to a time of great poverty, isolation, prohibitions, and social and mental enslavement. By engaging in informed, strategic, and collective voting practices, black people can influence election outcomes, promote political challenge, and create a strong, resilient, and thriving community that values unity, collaboration, empowerment, mutual support, social justice, and transformation. It must be noted that our sponsors and the church are not endorsing any candidate. Even though you may hear different names, you may hear about Vice President Harris. You may hear the name Mr. Trump. Our mission is to inform and educate our congregation and the listening audience on the issues that must be considered for you to vote. And now I would like to present to you our moderator for the evening, Mr. Roland Martin.
Let's go ahead and get this thing started. Significant black turnout in 2008, yet in all of the subsequent elections, we've seen black turnout drop since the initial election of President Obama in 2008. What we're also seeing are big changes demographic-wise, where you have voters who are really under the age of 55 who don't self-identify as Democrat, but they might lean Democrat in terms of how they vote. So, Reverend Sharpton, I want to start with you. How do we get our folks to understand that the demographics of our community have changed, and so how we communicate to black voters has to change than how we used to operate 30, 40 years ago?
So what has happened in the last 30 years or 25 years that you mentioned, Roland, is that the people that are doing the black campaigning do not have a real connection to the black community. So they don't know how to talk to us. They're talking for people they never talked to. And that's why when I started on Radio 1 and VON, and even later they gave me the MSNBC show. People said, well, you're not going to do your show 5 days a week. I said, no, I got to talk to black folks if I'm going to talk about them or talk for them. I don't do that on MSNBC. So you've got too many people that are talking for us that don't understand that. Yes, there's been a shift. And we've got to deal with the shift from not only social media and the impact on our young people, but there's some things that have not changed, but the way we communicate has changed. They've run away from the black church. No matter what you say, the largest gathering of black folks on a weekly basis is still the black church. So whether the numbers may have gone down, the other numbers have not gone up. Secondly, everybody that can do a song does not necessarily mean they can move voters. So they go out and get entertainers. And I told an entertainer, you may have 5,000 people at your concert, I may have 1,000 at my rally, but 90% of my rally votes, maybe 5% of your concert votes. So they don't know where the voters are. And then the process, something you and I were talking about, how you register voters, talk about early voting, and the method that needs to be made. And my last point on that is we cannot reduce voting to a personality of business, right, of whose side you on, Harris or Trump. The question is not whether you're on Harris' side or Trump's side. The question is who's on our side. Yeah. And that's how you vote.
You can talk about reproductive rights and be small business too. That ain't either or. That's both and then some. For no reason should a politician be in our beds. Politics kiss babies, they don't have babies. And so there is a great divide. Every woman of childbearing age needs to pay close attention to this, reproductive rights, because it will affect you. You may want to have an abortion and you may not. You may want to get pregnant and you may not. These are choices that women make based on a lot of things, but politicians should have nothing to do with it. It is a husband's decision and it is a doctor's decision, period. What we do is we talk about politics from the voting aspect. That is largely our conversation because we've had to struggle for it. It wasn't given to us. We had to fight for it. We had to march for it. We got lynched for it. We got houses burned down for it, on and on and on. But we are now at the point where we also need to talk about the economics of the politics. Right. That's important too. So women are not monolithic. Small business owner, house owner, raising children, we are all of that. And in our community, we are more of that as women than we care to be.
In Ohio, when they had the ballot initiative, the group that voted the highest was black men. Oh, you ought to know that. When they had the ballot initiative in Ohio, black men voted at a higher rate than any other group. And folks were mesmerized by that because what they didn't understand is the problem is that even that conversation has been framed for reproductive rights when actually it's a privacy issue. And so, again, it's a perfect example of how we have to understand you can't just look at an issue and then go, well, they're going to look at it this way, they're going to look at it this way. No, you have to treat the black voter in a different way now than you've ever done before because it's a totally different fragmented perspective.
Well, I mean, I think if you look at some of the data that we've been hearing, it's that black men are trending toward President Trump. We know what black women did for the Democratic Party in 2020, delivered Georgia, and we saw that representation come out real strong. I think one of our issues is we have to figure out how being black first is even more important than us being a black man or a black woman, right? See, you know, in the history in black history, we're always separating ourselves from each other. I say this on my show all the time, It's always you either a Booker T black person or a W.E.B. black person, You're either a Dr. King or a Malcolm X black person. We separate. You either a Prince or a Michael Jackson. Who you with? We always find a reason, LeBron and Michael Jordan. We're trying to separate ourselves instead of figuring out the reasons why we've been successful when we're together. When black people get fired up, we win. Obama, we win, right? Going against Trump in 2020.
Well, actually, according to pollster Terrence Woodbury, when he's doing his focus groups, when you tell a black voter that your vote could make the difference, they have a higher likelihood of voting than just saying vote.
And what election is going to make more of a difference? Roland, you, Reverend Sharpton, everybody knows. They tell us 40,000 votes are going to make a difference in 4 states. 2 of those states we know, Wisconsin and Michigan, have a large black population, have a large black metropolitan.
Yeah, but the problem, you look at Milwaukee, 2022, 50,000 fewer people voted in Milwaukee in that U.S. Senate race than they did in 2020.
Exactly.
Mandela Barnes, Lieutenant Governor brother, lost by 26,000 votes.
Should have been.
Had those 50,000 people in Milwaukee voted, he's a United States Senator and not MAGA Ron Johnson.
Absolutely.
But that's also incumbent upon you have to target those voters. You can't assume that they are going to turn out. And that's one of the things, Constance, I want to go to you. When Andrew Gillum ran in Florida, when he lost to Ron DeSantis, he lost by 30,000 votes. 18% of black women voted for Ron DeSantis, and people like, oh my God, and black women hate the Republican Party more than anybody else. That's not me. That's literally what the Republican National Committee told me in a meeting with Chairman Reince Priebus. But what they overlooked was charter schools. They overlooked the fact that those black mothers, they didn't care about a debate between teachers, union, and anything else. They wanted their kid educated, and that was an overlooked issue in Florida. So again, a prime example, you have to be paying attention to where black voters are, and don't just assume that they say charter schools are irrelevant, opportunity scholarships don't matter. That is a growing issue in black communities.
I'm really inspired by all of this conversation today because it reminds me of the importance as an educator, as a leader, of developing critical thinkers. Like all of the things that are being discussed here today that are happening in Florida or happen in Florida and Georgia and policy and reproductive rights, like we need students and young adults to be able to process this information and to make informed decisions. I tell folks all the time that we don't teach our kids like what to believe, but we teach them how to process and how to interpret what they're hearing and make informed decisions. And, we have to make sure that as much as we're teaching our students and young adults, the importance of marching in the streets, they also need to know how to march to the polls. Like both need to be true. You can't do one and do and not do the other and expect for there to be real change within our communities. So, with regard to the parents in Florida, in regard to charter parents, whether you're chartered or you go to a private school, whatever, we just need to make sure that we're empowering and uplifting parent voice. That is what's most important in our communities, is that we are listening to the folks we serve and that we're honoring their perspectives and the change that they want to see.
If you look at numbers, the reality is that, and this is true among all voters, but especially true among black people, the group that votes the highest is 65 plus. You talk to somebody 65 plus, you phone bank, they like, baby, when the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation, they were doing a phone banking, they called this sister, she was 87, she says, listen, y'all need to call somebody else. My son is picking me up at this time, taking me to the polls and bringing me back home. She had a plan already mapped out. Then the next group is 55, 64. Then the next group, you go down. The reality is the lowest voting group in America, black or otherwise, is 1835, which also happens to be the largest block of voters. So what I tell millennials and Gen Z, don't complain about all these old folk running stuff, they vote. How do you communicate that, the issues to millennial and Gen Z folks who are reading the tribe, to get them to understand that You can't complain about something if you check out of a process. Speak to that.
I think that we have to look at the way that this country and our city has divested from education. A Democrat, Rahm Emanuel, is the one who closed down 50 schools. And a lot of kids were lost in the system. So, and then we look at young voters and say that they're not involved when a lot of them are struggling to read and write. They don't understand the role that government plays in our lives. So we really have to do that outreach, but it starts with education and civic engagement and getting them involved early so that they understand the role that government plays in their lives.
It's been an interesting process in going through this every morning where I do what you did, which is to come on and try to give good information to our people. And what I'm learning from there and what I learned even from outside of there, and in the last week having had some opportunity to talk to some young people, is that there's a gap in information between us and them. I want to ask, first of all, thank you all for coming out. There were a whole lot of places you all could have been. Thank you all for being here this evening. Let me ask a question of you all. Anybody who's heard of Project 2025, raise your hand. Everybody's hand is up just about. What's interesting is the young people that I talked to last week were not familiar with Project 2025. Right. And so when I mentioned it to them, they immediately went to their phones to find out, but I had to mention it to them. And so what was clear to me is that they're getting their information, as Reverend Sharpton pointed out, there has to be a credible source for them to get information from. And that credible source so often is you. Because we do have a dearth of black media. So thrilled that WVON exists because we can come on and talk to each other, irrespective of who else is listening. Within our schools and within the school structure, there are some gaps. The schools do a lot of things. The question is, what are the schools supposed to do? And we asked that question when I was there. What is the role of education? What is the role of Chicago Public Schools? What is it that we're supposed to do? It was to educate, inspire, and transform is what we came to. Educate, inspire, and transform. But when we get to the nuts of things like what we're dealing with now in terms of the variables in society, the differences in the branches of government, given all that's going on and all the different places in which they get information, many of which are not verifiable. TikTok is not a verifiable place to get information. But this is where many of them are getting it from. And if they see something that's interesting, then they share it. And all this bad information gets shared amongst all of them, which is really where we, knowledgeable, have to step in and do that. We've got to put our arms around young folks beyond what's in the schools and help them to understand and appreciate what these things are. They've got to know what's at stake because the things that we do are things that are truly beneficial for them, more so than what's beneficial for us.
What were some of the most important things you learned today?
That you need to vote, need to get out and vote. Because this is a serious vote. This is a real serious voting this time. This is more serious than ever before to vote this time.
By sharing information and making sure that we go out here and vote and help other people to understand how important it is for us to vote and help young people as well. That's what I got out of that.